The Fall of Saigon. You know, the popular memory of the Fall of Saigon is helicopters on a roof, chaos, and desperate crowds. But here's the thing. A lesser-known fact is that the American evacuation had actually been planned for months, but, well, the final order was delayed by a single man's personal phone call. North Vietnamese tanks rolled out of the Central Highlands on March 10th, and by April 1st, they had covered nearly half the country. Washington had about 4 weeks to pull out 7,000 Americans and tens of thousands of Vietnamese allies. But honestly, they used most of that time just debating optics. The result was that the single most efficient helicopter evacuation in history happened not because of the plan, but really because the plan was finally allowed to run. What you think you know about that rooftop is probably wrong. By mid-April, North Vietnamese regulars had encircled Saigon but paused their advance, a calculated decision to let panic do the work. Inside the city, the Army of the Republic of Vietnam had effectively dissolved. Desertion rates hit 70% in units guarding the northern approaches. Ambassador Graham Martin, a career diplomat and staunch anti-communist, refused to authorize a visible evacuation because he believed a negotiated settlement was still possible. Martin's conviction had a specific effect. He blocked the use of large transport aircraft, insisting that an airlift would trigger a panic that would collapse the government. The irony is that the alternative, helicopters, could only carry a fraction of the passengers per trip and were far more vulnerable to ground fire. On April 28th, 3 South Vietnamese pilots commandeered their own planes and landed at Tan Son Nhut with their families crammed into the cockpits. 2 hours later, North Vietnamese rockets cratered the main runway, ending any possibility of fixed-wing evacuation. At 3 o'clock in the morning on April 29th, Ambassador Martin finally made the call he had resisted for weeks. The code word was broadcast on Armed Forces Radio, White Christmas. The plan, Operation Frequent Wind, activated 81 helicopters from the United States Navy's 7th Fleet, stationed 30 miles off the coast. So, the primary landing zone was not actually the embassy roof. It was, in fact, a parking lot behind the building, which was large enough to fit 2 helicopters at once. Now, the rooftop helipad, the one you see in every documentary, was really just a backup site for when the parking lot became unusable. And, that happened within hours, all because of a parked delivery truck. One of the most overlooked facts is that a South Vietnamese pilot actually landed his own Huey on the USS Midway with his wife and 5 children aboard. He had never landed on a carrier before. The ship's crew pushed it overboard to clear the deck for the next arrival. That helicopter is still on the ocean floor. By 8 o'clock in the morning on April 30th, North Vietnamese tanks smashed through the gates of the presidential palace. The embassy had been empty for 2 hours. The Fall of Saigon became the template for every non-combatant evacuation operation the United States has run since. The doctrinal lesson was brutal but clear. Delay in authorizing an evacuation does not prevent panic. It merely compresses the same panic into a shorter window. For the Vietnamese who made it out, the fall was not an ending. It was, the beginning of a diaspora that now numbers over 2 million in the United States alone. The Navy's improvised rescue of dozens of South Vietnamese naval vessels and their crews, never ordered, done because it was right, remains a story most histories, honestly, just skip. History that goes deeper does not ask you to pick a side in a war that ended 50 years ago. It asks you to understand why. Well, the last day always looks like the first day could have been different. Subscribe to War Machiner and share this if you value history that goes deeper.